Warning, what you're about to watch is very much R-rated and shouldn't be viewed in the presence of children. The R-rated content has directly to do with Mr. Trump, however, and is absolutely necessary to the point of the film. Also, a lot of what you're going to see in this film is probably going to upset you. Some of you may actually start to get pretty offended, but I can assure you that I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, and I can promise you that if you'll simply sit, be patient, and listen, you'll see by the end that I am very much presenting this to you from a completely unbiased perspective. In November of 2016, tens of millions of Christians showed up to vote for Donald John Trump. They showed up in droves to vote for this man.
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know?
Stop it! Oh, it's so weird. Stop. You know what? You are sick.
Isn't it terrible?
Yeah.
Needless to say, my wife and I were stunned and appalled. Not by his win, though. I actually predicted that one. We were stunned and appalled because we are also Christians, and we simply could not believe that so many other fellow believers, including the vast majority of our own families and all of our immediate families, voted for him. They all voted for this guy.
Would I approve waterboarding? You bet your ass I'd approve it. You bet your ass. In a heartbeat.
It was incredibly disappointing, to say the least. It was disappointing because these were the people who raised us. These were the people who taught us the importance of strong moral values. They took us to church and placed within us scripture, teachings from Christ on what it means to be Christian, instructions on how to be better humans. But then, in 2016, all of a sudden, poof. And just like that, none of it seemed to matter anymore. And all those morals they talked about went flying out the window for the sake of political parties, civic duty, and patriotism. And this guy was selected as the leader of God's people.
And if you don't support me, you're going to be so goddamn poor, you're not going to believe it.
And all at once, it was like we no longer recognized our own families. They seemed so distant. We thought we agreed on what morals were, on what it meant to be Christian, and yet it now appeared as though all of that meant nothing. Everything we had been taught, in a way, everything we were, not only as Christians, but also as people, was now suddenly thrown into question. And all because Hillary Clinton is truly evil, right? And Donald Trump is the lesser of two evils, right? Well, the problem with the lesser of two evils is you're still choosing evil. The other monumentally enormous, open, gaping hole in that very flawed and rather ridiculous logic is, of course, that there were more than just two options. And no, not every option was evil, or even bad. Actually, to be completely honest, I don't think any of the options, Trump included, were literally evil. I mean, my God, people, why are we always so overeager to label everything evil? You understand that evil is the absolute furthest extent of bad, right? You realize there's bad, and then worse, and then worst, and then, psychopath, I guess, and then maybe, after that, evil. Like, you realize evil is like a literal synonym for Satan himself, right? But hey, weird narrator guy, what of civic duty, you may be asking? What of patriotism? What of America? I mean, if you can't vote for the man, vote for the party, right? Right? Right?
Alrighty then.
Well, I don't know. What is more important to you? God or country? Jesus or politics? Winning and power or the Lord? The empire or the Lamb? Because if we choose country, if we choose party, if we choose politics over God or in spite of God or instead of God, then all those things are our gods. For my wife and I, the answer was insultingly simple. And look, I'm not saying we're perfect. We're not. Far from it, actually. No one is. We struggle every day, constantly, particularly about this very subject. It's just, we saw Trump from the very beginning for exactly what he was. An immediate compromising of morals, an immediate compromising of our Christian values. And we simply didn't find it morally appropriate to enter into a covenant with such a person, even if it promised wealth and worldly possessions, which, by the way, the Bible and Jesus were never a big fan of. We aren't exactly experts on Trump, but anyone who knows anything about the man or has ever paid any attention to him for any amount of time can tell you that he's the epitome of the shady rich businessman with compromised ethics who will do anything for money, including lie, cheat, and steal. He's an archetype of those very traits, actually. Of course, I guess to properly understand Donald Trump, we have to go back to his grandfather, Friedrich Trump, an immigrant from Germany who became a rich man from opening whorehouses in Washington and Canada. Then there's Donald's father, Fred Trump, who was investigated for profiteering by both the U.S. government and the state of New York on multiple occasions. Profiteering is basically when you make immoral amounts of money in immoral ways. Fred was later sued, along with Donald, by the U.S. Department of Justice for refusing to rent apartments to black people. I'd also like to mention that Fred Trump was once arrested in New York in 1927 at a KKK rally. Donald, of course, denies that his father was ever arrested at all, but the New York newspaper article from 1927 begs to differ. In fact, it literally says that when Fred was arrested, he was also wearing a Klan robe. Lastly, there's Donald, who has had many indiscretions himself over the decades, both in his business endeavors and his personal life, including multiple bankruptcies, multiple wives, and legitimate, yes, legitimate, they were substantiated sexual assault allegations. 22 different women, in fact, that made the allegations as far back as 1989. One of those accusers was his own ex-wife, who also accused him of physical abuse as well. And, you know, considering this,
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy.
it doesn't seem to be that out of character. But we'll get back to that later. When you think about it, there's really only a few different reasons that so many Christians could have voted for a man so seemingly and openly immoral. One is that they're not actually Christian and simply pretend to be. Another would be that they are aware of who he is and they voted for him anyway, which makes them hypocrites, and according to the Bible, God very much doesn't like that. Then there's the third option, which, because my wife and I are naturally inclined to give our fellow believers the benefit of the doubt, is our pick. What we believe is that these Christians only voted for him because they simply weren't aware of everything at the time. They simply didn't know that much about him. They weren't aware of any of the stuff that I'm about to show you. Or maybe they didn't pay attention. And honestly, that's understandable. Politics is annoying and tedious. But see, the problem is that sometimes that lack of attention can have some pretty scary consequences. Sometimes when you're not adequately informed and you make bad decisions, it can cause massive problems. Not just socially, but also economically, financially, globally, and most importantly, spiritually. So, what I'm about to show you is just that. The things we know about Donald Trump the person, the scriptures that go along with it, and the consequences that our bad decisions could lead to. And look, maybe you already heard about some of these things, but never actually saw anything about it and aren't sure whether or not they're true. Well, that's fine. That's what we're gonna figure out. Or maybe you didn't know about any of this. And if that's you, well, then I'm sorry, but this probably isn't going to be very comfortable for you. And actually, it might end up being pretty embarrassing. But nevertheless, it is our hope that by the end of this, you, the Christian Trump voter and or supporter, will understand why he shouldn't have been the Christian choice in 2016 and why he definitely shouldn't be in 2020 either. Thank you for taking the time to view this, and we ask only that you watch with an open heart so that maybe you can see what the Lord has laid upon ours.